Right, welcome back. It's now time for Datapoint, reflecting on what's just about to affect the pay slips in the country, because Nssf rates are taking a different turn. And let's take a look at that, because so far, up until January 2025, which is January 2026, which is the figure that you see here, that there were different tiers. Tier 1, the lower limit was 8,000 shillings, and the tier 2 was a limit of 72,000 shillings. That is changing, meaning that in 2026, starting this month, the lower tier will be up to a limit of 9,000 shillings, or tier 1 will be a limit of 9,000 shillings, and the tier 2 is 108,000 shillings. So this is important, and I'll be telling you why, because the Nssf rate is still 6%. So tier 1 will be 6% of your salary of up to 9,000 shillings, and then the balance, which is 108,000 minus 9,000, should your salary be that, then it will also be charged at 6%. I'll tell you why that requires to be different, and also the employer must match that. Let's take a look at what has happened, because in January 2026, that is last month, at tier 1, the salary scale was 8,000 at 6%, which is 480 shillings. The upper limit for tier 2 was 72,000 shillings. So 72,000 shillings minus 8,000 shillings is 64,000. So you apply 6% on 64,000, you get to 3,840. And therefore, that's why the total, the maximum contribution has been 4,320 for every worker in Kenya. Let's take a look at the other slide that shows us what is going to happen in February 2026, which is this month. Tier 1, 9,000. 6% is 540. For tier 2, the limit, if your salary is above 72,000 but not above 108,000, then that will be charged at 6%. So the balance of 108,000 and 9,000 is 99,000. That attracts 5,940, and therefore the contribution in total will be 6,480. But obviously you can tell that tier 1, 540 shillings may go to the Nssf, and the balance of 5,940 may either go to Nssf, or if your employer has procured a private pension scheme, then they can be in a position to send that money there, including a matching figure from the employer themselves. Now, beyond that is that let's take a look at what would happen to the pay slip of a person earning up to 40,000 shillings. So this is the contribution as per tier 1. Remember, maximum of 9,000, 6% is 540. And the employer must match that. So the total contribution for that employee will be 1,080 shillings. For tier 2, it is 1,860 because of 6% of the balance between 9,000 and 40,000. So you get 1,860, and the total contribution by employee is 2,400. The total contribution by employer is 2,400. This may look like it's what you've been doing, because the total still will be 4,800. But in January 2026, because of the difference in the lower limit of tier 1, it was 8,000, meaning that you're contributing 480 shillings, which is the figure you find down there. And the employer, or rather, in tier 2, you are contributing 1,920. So the total is still the same, but differences in the tiers, tier 1 versus tier 2. Let's take a look at what else we can signal in as far as a comparison of what changes. For a person earning 80,000 shillings per month, tier 1 contribution is 540, of course matched by the employer, giving you 1,080, and then tier 2 is 4,260 because you're now doing the math of between 9,000 and 80,000, and you get the total of 4,800. So the total contribution for that employee is 9,600. Remember, January which is last month, the total contribution, the maximum contribution was 4,320, which is the figure that you find there. So there's that difference between 4,800 and 4,320. Let's take a look at something else for someone, the pay slip of a person that earns 80,000 shillings. This is what has changed over time. In January last year, they got a net pay. At the time, of course, considerations were different. They got a net pay of 59,724. In Feb 2025, up until Jan 2026, they got a net pay of 58,212. Now, for this month, that pay will go down by 336 shillings, and they will receive 57,876. And of course, we are assuming that they do not have any other contributions, whether it's to different pension schemes or even insurance deductions, that they get all their money. So that will be the change in terms of the amount they'll be receiving at the end of the day. Let's take a look at a person earning more than 108,000, which is the upper limit. In this case, someone whose salary gross pay is 120,000 shillings. So in January 2025, they took home 86,534. In February 2025 until Jan 2026, they got 85,022 shillings. That's what they took home. This month of February, that take home will reduce by 1,512 because they'll take home 83,510. And obviously this is will also change when it comes to next year. I'll be telling you about that. But also just to emphasize this point, but that tier 1 contributions must be paid to the Nssf, and tier 2 contributions can be invested in private pension funds by the employer. But obviously you know that the minimum contribution is 6% as per the law. Finally, to look at what will happen come February 2027, which is next year. Remember that we've said that the maximum consideration is 108,000. Next year, it will rise to 144,000, meaning that people whose salaries are beyond that, they'll pay a deduction of 8,640, which is 6% of 144,000. And this is in line with the reforms that were brought by the Nssf Act of 2013. That's Data Point for this week.